Show where all the technology works just exactly as we want it to, and we'll start on time, and it will be a glorious, glorious thing. This week is not that week. Instead, we're coming at you live at 8:02 p.m., the beginning of Trojan Dash. We'd like to say it's not an official show until we start late or there's some technical problems, so I guess it's an official show now. Anthony, how are you doing on this glorious, glorious, victorious, some might say, Sunday evening?
Much better than last week. As I always say, I feel like every time there's a USC win. But yeah, I'm all right. What about you?
I'm all right. I realized I just put my headphones on and it's not connected, so I hear you through my computer system, so I feel like kind of an idiot, but it's all right. We'll get through it. USC obviously is feeling a lot better than I am. They are coming off a pretty significant 37-14 win over the Buffaloes in Colorado. It was a pretty all-around performance. Why don't we start, though, Anthony, with the passing game? Kedon Slovis, I thought, made a big statement with his performance against the Buffs. He frankly balled out, and he had a lot of weapons at his disposal who were all playing well. Give me your main takeaways from the offensive attack, specifically through the air in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, I've been the Kedon Slovis hater for like about a month now, so I think he might have been listening to a lot of Trojan Dash because he came out and he played easily his best game of the season. It was at 19 of 29, 276 yards, 3 touchdowns, no turnovers, which is a pretty excellent game. I mean, coming into this one, he had 4 touchdowns and 4 interceptions. So he balled out, like you said, in the Rocky Mountain. And in terms of receiving, geez, I mean, I'll go real quick on Drake London. I mean, the dude's insane. I mean, 9 receptions for 130 yards. He had a touchdown. It's just getting too easy at this point. In 5 games, 4 of them, he's had over 100 receiving yards. I think, maybe, if USC had a better record, a Heisman campaign would be ideal for Drake London, but it's looking pretty slim at the moment. But, yeah, you talked a little bit about the receiving. Or
Can I say one thing about Drake, and then I'll give you the floor back.
Yeah, please
I
go
asked
ahead.
him I asked him yesterday in Boulder after the game. I was like, Drake, your name has been talked about for the Bletnikoff for quite some weeks now. I feel like he's creeping into that Heisman consideration. I mean, he is far and away the best receiver statistically in college football this year, and he's having a Heisman-worthy campaign so far. If he continues on this pace, I wouldn't be surprised if he, finds his way into that top three finalist conversation. Obviously, it's hard for a non-quarterback to do that, especially on the West Coast, but. I was like, Drake, have you thought about these things? Like, is this something that motivates you? And he was basically like, no, I'm just trying to get W's. And most people are going to say that, and most people, you're not really going to believe it because, like, people just think about those kinds of things. It's kind of natural when you're that good. With him, I actually believe it. That dude is one of the quietest guys, especially given his talent level, I've ever seen in my entire life. And I totally believe that he's just focused on the wins. I'm not saying it would be wrong to think about all the awards that might come his way because there could be plenty, but one of the most even-keeled, composed, and talented guys in the country. So he continues to impress me every single week. But I'll give it back to you. I just had to butt in with that one quick thought.
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, and I'll say real quick anecdote. Taj Washington, I think it was Taj Washington, and I asked him about Drake London a couple of weeks ago, and he said the dude's so humble, like you won't even know he just will just be riding on campus like it's nothing. He's just very humble and very down to earth. So I agree with that. And yeah, I mean, I saw something too, real quick. Through 5 games, he has better stats than Devontae Smith had last year through 5 games, which look obviously not the same, Pac-12, SEC, whatever you want to say. So that's pretty impressive though. But as I digress, Michael Trigg, I was going to mention Michael Trigg, 2 receptions, 51 yards. Honestly, felt like he had a bigger game than that. His impact is huge for this offense, getting him involved as well as Gary Bryant Jr., 2 receptions, 21 yards. He had another touchdown, third straight game in a row where he has a receiving touchdown. If that was a trivia, that was a prop bet before the season, you'd be, pretty wealthy right now. If you said that Gary Bryant Jr. would be the receiver with 3 straight games with a receiving touchdown, getting him involved is crucial. Taj Washington, look, real quick about Taj Washington. I don't know what's going on with this deep ball to Taj Washington. With all due respect, 5'10", 5'11". Hell, I'm a little taller than him. And they're going deep ball, trying to go back shoulder, goal line or sideline fade. Get him some screens, get him some bubble plays. He's really fast with the ball. And he had, 3 receptions, 46 yards. So you got to give him some more love. And this game specifically, there's something that, we were kind of paying attention to early on how the other receivers would get some love. As I count over here, 7 or 8. I think it's 8. 8, no, 7. Jeez, I can't count. 7 receivers had a reception. Granted, some of them, only had one. Keontae Ingram, Malcolm Epps, Vive Malapai. But the love is starting to spread, and I think that's important to see. Obviously, Drake London still dominates with 9 targets, but it was very encouraging to see the receivers get some love, especially because Slovis had struggled to do that early on. Outside of Jackson Dart's game, it just kind of had been the Drake London show. It's kind of still scary because not a lot of receptions, but when you have Drake London on your team, it's kind of like Tyreek Hill. You just throw it down and just hopefully grabs it, and that's about what's going on.
Yeah, exactly. And people have been talking for weeks about the Trojans relying on Drake London too much. And we talked about this a bit a couple weeks ago. Like, no, they're not, because he's really good. And he can be triple teamed. He can be triple teamed. If they're playing man coverage on him in any capacity, he's gonna make the play. And if they're playing zone, he's gonna get open. So yeah, there was the one sequence in the first quarter. He had 96 receiving yards in the first quarter alone, which is just absurd. He had the one sequence where he made like a 20, 25, 30 yard reception on that one jump ball, like down around the 2 or 3 yard line, where he actually jumped a little bit too early, and then it just seemed like he floated and paused in midair for like 20 seconds and came down with it. And then they tried some unsuccessful running play, I forget to whom, and then the coverage on Drake London's touchdown was really good. Like, anybody else in the country, and that's an incomplete pass, or probably it's not even thrown, or maybe it's picked or something like that. But like, that was really good coverage. And Kedon just kind of was like, okay, I'm going to throw it here, and either Drake's going to get it or nobody's going to get it. Throw was perfect, and Drake just the quickness with which he turned his body and then just stuck out his arm and just it happened like that. And it was one of the most insane plays. I was lucky enough to be on the sideline right next to that play where it happened, and my jaw just hit the ground. I was like, there's no way he just did that. The guy just continues to amaze. And it's pretty special because, yeah, they're not relying on him too much at all, because he's going to make those plays when he's being double or triple teamed, or if it's single team, good luck. But he was saying after the game too, he was like, he was saying something like, we have so many weapons on this team that if they're going to put 2 or 3 guys on me, like, fine, the other guys are going to go eat. Michael Trigg did that. Gary Bryant did that. And I want to talk about Gary Bryant for a second, because you mentioned that he's had 3 straight weeks with a touchdown now. I think people envision Gary Bryant's role as being more of a, deep ball threat, because he's fast and he's not like, the biggest guy. But 3 straight weeks with a red zone touchdown, and the touchdown catch against Colorado. First of all, another beautiful ball by Kedon Slovis. There was some real zip on that thing, and it was like it was a crowded window, and he was being covered pretty tight too, and he just grabbed it amid a whole lot of traffic, and it seemed like it was almost a play that you expect a tight end to make, and it was a really impressive grab. I think it was on 3rd down too. I was expecting them to just go to Drake. Drake had, I think, one-on-one coverage on the right side or the left side, and it's like, okay, they're going to throw a fade to him. He's probably going to catch it. I forget if he wasn't open or if that wasn't the play designer, whatever the case. It was a beautiful play and a beautiful throw, a beautiful catch by Gary Bryant. So seeing him emerge as a legitimate, surprising red zone weapon candidate has really been encouraging. What else do you have on Kedon Slovis, who we talked about, made kind of a statement game? People were saying Miller Moss should start. I'll admit it, I was one of those people. I don't know if I was even necessarily wrong last week based on what I saw the week before, but I mean, I guess you put out the guys who give you the best chance to win. The way Kedon Slovis played, he's had a lot of these weeks where it was like pretty good in the first half, and then he kind of falls off in the second half. I didn't really see a whole lot of that. He was phenomenal.
Yeah, definitely his best game of the season by far. I mean, look, we've been harsh. We've really been attacking Kedon. The reason why is because we know he's capable of games like this. I mean, this was really a flawless game. Honestly, I didn't think he did anything wrong. And like you said, he didn't have that second half downturn. And really the offense in general didn't have that second half downturn where they kind of go 3 and out. I think that was mainly because of the running game, which we'll get into. But I think Kedon was great. I think like you said, he had some zip on the ball. He was very accurate. That's what you need for him. That's all you need. You've got so many talented weapons around him. And I think if he starts spreading the ball, like what Drake London also said, because teams are going to start doubling him. I mean, Colorado went single coverage, and he got almost 100 in the first quarter. So teams are going to start doubling him. And I think the involvement of Michael Trigg, I think it's a Dante Williams thing, because Clay Helton didn't really involve him. Well, granted, we only saw for 2 games. but getting him more involved is going to be huge. And I think Graham Harrell, his play calling has improved tremendously since that Stanford game. So it's looking good so far for the offense, but we'll have to see against Utah next week.
Yeah, and one of the most important effects of the effective passing game was that it opened up USC's much maligned run game. And why don't we get into that a little bit? The thing that was most surprising to me was 10 carries for Darwin Barlow and 10 carries for Vavae Malepeai too. Keontae Ingram led the attack with 14 carries, but I don't know if we're going to start seeing a sort of split back concept between three different guys. Barlow played pretty well. I think he had 6.1 or 6.3 yards per carry or something like that. Ingram looked athletic as always. That guy's uber athletic, and he looked great. Anthony, what were your big takeaways from the run game? And actually, I'm going to do something a little bit unprofessional here because my computer is at 23% and is always dying before it gets below 10. So I might have to go grab my charger. I'm going to turn my camera off, and I'm going to let you carry the conversation about the run game for about 60 seconds, if you will.
I will carry it, yes. The run game, yeah. I did not see this coming. The split of three running backs. So Keontae Ingram, just to go through the stats real quick. Keontae Ingram, 14 carries, 124 yards. Obviously had that long 53-yard run. And then Darwin Barlow out of nowhere, TCU transfers, sophomore, 10 carries, 61 yards. And then Vavae Malepeai, who had been kind of shut out last week, barely any carries, had 10 himself. Honestly, I thought he was fewer than 10. So 10 carries for 36 yards. The run game just looks fantastic, to be honest. And this three-headed trio, three-headed snake, if you might say, of running backs, I think is going to help them a lot. I think the offense is going to be more unpredictable because all three of these running backs, they bring different things to the table. Keontae Ingram is very difficult to defend or tackle in the open field. He's fast, he's agile, and he's strong. Darwin Barlow is a speedster. He's very quick. And then Vavae Malepeai is a solid back, veteran. You know what you're going to get from him. Practically no mistakes from Vavae. So I think it's a good thing if you're having three running backs. And I think Dante Williams might have mentioned it yesterday or today that he's going to keep that open, that competition open. I know Clay Helton had that 1A, 1B system, but I like the three-back system. And I think Darwin Barlow had really great runs, and he had some great contributions to the team. I think Keontae should be, like I've mentioned before, he should be the visible back, or not the visible back. He should be the main back. He should be the lead back. I think he makes the offense more unpredictable. And, we saw that with that run. Once he gets out in open field, he's practically gone. So I think the running game was just much improved. I mean, we didn't see that last season, and it's great using that. I really like the three-back system, splitting that up. I think Keontae Ingram had majority of the snaps, but getting Barlow in, I think, is a really good idea. So I'm all for this system. I'm all for the three backs. I'm all for having maybe Vavae be a third down back in the pass catching system, but we'll have to see.
I think the most surprising thing to me was people have been calling for a balance between the pass game and the run game for this team ever since Graham Harrell took over. And what most of the time they'll have a performance or they'll have a game where it's like a 60 to 40% split where 60% passes and 40% rushes, and people will be like, okay, this is a step in the right direction. But yesterday it kind of blew me away. There were 34 rushing attempts by USC running backs, and Kedon Slovis was 19 for 29. So there were actually, it's like they were favoring the run game even more, which I thought was shocking. I didn't think I would ever see that. But I think the thing that the running game did, like I said, was it opened up the passing game a whole lot too. You just looked like, it seemed like Kedon Slovis had a lot more protection. It seemed like the defense was a lot more, kept on their toes, off balance a bit. And then especially when you divide up those running plays, they were divided up into guys with three different looks. So I think that kind of caught him off guard too. And Dante Williams was saying just now in his Sunday evening media thing, somebody was asked him why the increased workload for Darwin Barlow. And he basically said, because he's healthy now. So I wonder if this is something that they've been planning for a few weeks now. They just haven't been able to do. Like, I wonder if he had been healthy the whole season. I wonder if we would have seen, a carry breakdown similar to this in week 1 or 2, because he looked pretty good out there. He had, 10 carries, 61 yards, 6.1 yards per carry. Vavae Malepeai had 10 carries, 36 yards, 3.6 yards per carry. I will say I didn't think he looked like bad. It just seemed like there was a lot less room to run on the plays where he ran, which is like not entirely his fault. And then Ingram, 14 carries, 124 yards, 8.9 yards per carry. I think it's pretty safe to say that he probably has the most, as far as just a pure runner, he's probably the most prolific running back in this USC offense. Obviously, Vavai has probably more use in the passing game, and then Barlow maybe is like a third down or goal line situation kind of guy, a short yardage kind of thing. So I think they have a pretty good split, and they have a pretty good trio of guys to work with. I know people are not crazy about running back committees; they want to just give it to the best guy. But I think the more looks, the better, and it seems to work out fine.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, I mentioned that earlier too about how each back is kind of brings a different thing to the table, and I think using even Barlow maybe in a little bit of halfback screens, kind of like those little short plays to just get them running, I think can be really beneficial. And I do agree with Keontae Ingram. I think the 53-yard run, if you watch the game and you see the stats, it makes sense that he had that game because he was dominant. I think he was getting whatever he wanted in that run game, and he was exploding. And I think he's a solid goal line back too. But the thing that's good for USC is they can rely on either Keontae Ingram or Vavai in the goal line, or just in general, if they want to it's a tough 3rd and 1, 3rd and 2, you could give it to either one of those two backs and have Darwin Barlow be the explosive type back and create more opportunities for him. And I think it's a really good situation. And that's interesting about Dante Williams saying if he was in, or now that he's healthy, that they're going to use him more. I actually did not know that. So that's pretty interesting. And hopefully, I mean, we'll have to see what goes on with the air raid. I think this might have been something with Colorado not being able to defend the run as well. But if they continue to do it against Utah, I think it makes this offense more unpredictable because it gets too, it's the same thing when you go to Slovis and he starts in the shotgun and he doesn't go hand the ball off, first play of the game to pass. I hate that. So it's good for them to mix it up with the run.
Why don't we talk about the running game on the other side of the ball? Because I think that was one of the most encouraging signs coming off the Week 4 loss to Oregon State, where they allowed 322 rushing yards. It might have been 332. I think it was 322. Either way, it was in the 300s, which is not good. They had 80, Colorado did yesterday. 80, quick math. Yep, 80 rushing yards the entire game. Pac-12 Offensive Player of the Year, Jarek Broussard, 16 carries for 68 yards, 4.2 yards per carry. They really contained him. And when you look at the Colorado offense, if you can slow him, they don't really have much else. I mean, their receiving core is fine. The quarterback's fine, but it's basically you stop Jarek Broussard, they're not going to be able to do much on offense. And there was a part of the game around halftime where Colorado had scored just before the half, and there were some penalties that USC gave them that sort of kept them hanging around. And people were saying, are they letting them hang around in this game too long? It went into halftime as a 20-7 game. It felt like they were up by 4 touchdowns just because Colorado was able to do nothing on the offensive side of the ball, and that's largely because USC's, again, much maligned running defense or rushing defense. Todd Orlando and his group did a really good job of containing that. Last week, they were just totally out-schemed. They would run it up the gut, and they had nobody there to stop it. And they would try to do that yesterday, and it simply didn't work.
Yeah, their run defense was outstanding. I mean, the way that was kind of the story going into this game, how the defense bounced back after the Oregon State game where they gave up 530 some yards, total yards. So it was an excellent response. And I think there was a misleading stat that this was the 14 points that Colorado had was the largest point total they had the entire season, which is misleading because if you watch the game, USC defense, I think, was in control the entire game. I mean, the pressure was on. I think that run defense, like you said, they really didn't let them get any type of momentum. They were stopping them immediately. And that's what you kind of have to do, especially against a run-heavy team. So, yeah, that's really all I have to say about the run defense.
Yeah, I saw that stat too. Like most points against an FBS opponent, and it's like, okay, sure, but it was 14. Like, I don't know. When you have an offense that's playing as well as USC's did, or even if you have an offense that's on an off night, you allow 14 points, you're going to win most football games. Why don't we talk about the rest of the Pac-12? Because it was a crazy week in the Pac-12, and not just in the Pac-12 South. You had Oregon losing to Stanford, UCLA getting blown out by Arizona State, who's now 4-1 on the season. What else happened? Oregon State beat Washington. Yeah, Oregon State beat Washington. The Beavers are looking good this year. We know that from last week. Anthony, take a step back for a second and tell me where do you think this USC team stacks up against the Pac-12's best? Because I'll answer my own question briefly. Oregon's good, right? Oregon's a good football team. You beat Ohio State on the road, you're going to be a good football team, obviously. I don't know if I ever really bought into them as being the third best team in the country. That's not to say they didn't deserve their number 3 rankings. I guess when you look at their resume and their wins and the way that they had played so far in this year, like they deserve the number 3 ranking. But I don't know if they were necessarily the third best team. I thought that it wasn't that improbable that somebody in the Pac-12 would take them down, and it happened yesterday with Stanford. And by the way, that makes USC's loss against Stanford, which I mean, it can only look so good because they lost by 14 points, and it looked, the actual feeling of the game was a lot worse than that because 2 of those last couple touchdowns were in garbage time. And I don't know if people really cared about that loss anymore because that was under Clay Helton. He's obviously not here anymore. But point is, Oregon looks beatable. Everybody in the Pac-12 South looks beatable. UCLA's kind of fallen off its high horse a little bit. So when you look at this USC team, flaws and all, inconsistency and all, play well one week, get blown out the next week, blow them out the next week. It's sort of been this kind of cycle for the first 5 weeks of the season. But take a step back. Tell me, where do you think USC fits in among the Pac-12's best?
I think it's wide open. I think it's wide open. I think the South, especially after UCLA's loss, I think Arizona State looks the best right now. But I think if USC gets a big win against Utah, I think it's wide open for them. Utah is not as great as previous seasons, and I think they've got a shot to take them down at the Coliseum. But we know what happens at the Coliseum, especially if it's almost kind of like a night game. It's kind of like a nightmare once it's a night game. So we'll have to see. But I think USC, right now they're in the middle of the pack. But they've got a chance to really make some ground with a win next week. Because then I think they're undefeated against the South. Or is that the first game they play against? No, yeah, that was
the first game. They're 1-0 in the South. They're 0-2. No, 1-2 in the North.
Yeah, so they've got to. Yeah, I think that's right. They haven't played any South. So yeah, they've got to get that win. You've got to get a Pac-12 South win just to kind of get some momentum going. Because after that, if you lose to Utah and then you go on the road to Notre Dame, more than likely you're coming back home 3-5 or 3-4, and that's not looking too good. So I think it's important for them to get that win. I think that they, really it's all up to them at this point. I think they're in charge of their own destiny. I think we talked about it maybe a couple of weeks ago, just about where they fit in. But they're still right there. They're in the middle of the pack. They've got their chances. They have their opportunities. I think UCLA losing is pretty big for them. Arizona State they looked fantastic yesterday. So I think there's still a lot of trouble. But outside of that, like you said, you got to give Oregon respect, even though they lost Stanford, but they beating Ohio State on the road is pretty impressive. So you got to give them some love. And Oregon State, obviously, we know about Oregon State and Stanford. So look, I think the middle of the pack, like I said, they've got a chance. I think if they lose to Utah, it's not going to be good.
Yeah, I would agree. I think Oregon is still probably far and away the best team in the Pac-12 overall. But again, they look vulnerable. They look like they can be beat, essentially. They don't look like they're Alabama or anything like that. It's going to be a tight race between, if it's USC and Arizona State, to just win the Pac-12 South, because right now Arizona State hasn't even lost in the Pac-12. And if you look at their upcoming opponents, they got Stanford at home. I guess Stanford's like good or something. I don't know. Apparently, I'm not too ready to fully hop on board the Stanford bandwagon hype train, but you beat USC like they did, and you beat Oregon like they did. It's hard to see them as a cakewalk, I guess. But then they got Utah, they got Washington State, they got USC, which will be a huge game. Washington the week after doesn't look all that great. Oregon State on the road, that'll be a tough game, and then they play Arizona. So it isn't like they have to play Oregon. So you're going to need them. You're going to need USC to win out, obviously beating Arizona State along the way, and then hope Arizona State can lose one more game also. And it doesn't seem like it's going to be Washington. I guess it could be Oregon State, but Oregon State's still unranked. It's not like they're some powerhouse. They just got the Beaver Magic, I guess. Maybe it could be Stanford, but I think that race is going to come down to the wire, essentially. You're still at a place where USC doesn't really control its own destiny, but if they win out, it's hard to see any team being, just wire-to-wire dominant enough to sort of take the Pac-12 South from them. I could be totally wrong, but it seems like if they are to beat Arizona State, and like you said, UCLA rivalry game, even though the teams may be trending in opposite directions, UCLA going down and USC going slightly up, if you want to, really weigh the Colorado game heavily, that could be a tight game still, so I don't know what's going to happen there. I think USC is still going to need some help, and I think they're probably right now. I think you can safely say that they're the second best team in the Pac-12 South behind Arizona State. I would probably put them ahead UCLA at this point. I mean, the what was the score of that Arizona? It was 42-23. They beat them by 19 points. It really was not that competitive, and it was at the Rose Bowl. Not very encouraging. Obviously, USC has had its fair share of not very encouraging losses at home this season too, but I think right now I would give USC the nod over the Bruins, and then obviously Colorado and Arizona are not looking great, and I think this will be a big matchup this weekend against Utah. But then you look at the Pac-12 North, and you have Oregon's pretty good, Oregon State's looking pretty good, Stanford's looking decent. Like, but after 1 week, we were all saying like the power dynamic has really shifted, and the Pac-12 South has become sort of the beast of the Pac-12, and all of a sudden, I don't know if that's so true anymore.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think we said that after like maybe the first 2 weeks. But one thing you mentioned though about Arizona State, I do think they're the best team in the Pac-12. I still think UCLA is just a little bit better than USC, just because I feel like if there was a little change in what Chip Kelly decided to do in the goal line on fourth down, I feel like this would be a different conversation. But you said it, you hit it home. I think if they've got Arizona State and UCLA are must wins. No matter what, I think if they win, even if they lose to Utah, if they lose to either one of those games, well, if they lose to Arizona State, it's practically over for their hopes. So I think those are must wins. I think they're tougher games to win, especially on the road at Arizona State. So that's why you gotta secure those home victories. I mean, against Utah at home, against Arizona at home, those are must win games, and you've got to try to get some life into that and try to get some record in the South, because like we said, they haven't played yet. In the North, I mean, the North is practically the better side now after 5 weeks after we said that they were going downhill and the South was going to overtake the North. But I like, you said that it's kind of they need help from other schools. I think they do need help, but I think they can take care of it if they just win those games. I know it sounds so simple, but it really is at the end of the day. They've got to just take care of their business at home, and they've got to steal a road win at Arizona State. And I think it's doable. I think it's possible.
I agree. And it's all going to start this upcoming weekend against Utah. And we'll be back next Sunday night to talk about that. But until then, we're going to have to end this show for today. Again, sorry for the late start, technical difficulties. It's a thing on Trojan Dash. It's just a ritual. It happens every week. Sorry, we can't really do anything about it. Make sure to follow us on all of our various social platforms: Facebook, Instagram, Snapchat, TikTok, Twitter. I always botch this part. Follow us on our website at Dash Sports TV, and make sure to keep up with all of our other shows from around the conference. Anthony, let's end this with what we always end it with. Give me a score and a winner this weekend against Utah.
Jeez. I think I'm like 0-3 with these predictions. And actually, no, I have a theory. So at every game, every game I'm at, USC is played horrible. I was at the San Jose State game, I was at the Stanford game, and I was at the Oregon State game. Granted, they won the San Jose State game, but they played bad, and then the other two, we know what happened. But they're undefeated when I don't go to the games. And this Saturday, I'm actually not going to be at the game. So I think they're gonna win it. They're going to win it, but we'll have to see next week.
Some deep analysis brought to you by Anthony. We'll see. We will break it down.
Remember, you would say like how your gut feels? That's just how it is for me.
It's true. I do pull that card a lot, and I guess I really don't have a right to say anything about it. We'll see if you're right. We'll be back on Sunday night to break it all down. Until then, enjoy the rest of your Sunday, folks. Enjoy the rest of your week. We'll talk to you next time.